I'm sure there are things, there are always things missing in every aspect
Hmm.
of our lives. There are ways we need to improve, and that's certainly true of education. But I'm not sure that fundamentally the issue that you have your finger on is an issue that is something education is primarily the source of a solution. To me, you're pointing at deeper questions of humanity.
As I'm working at the American College of Greece, it reminds me how education can shape lives. For me, it was a scholarship that I received in 2017. However, the story of education is much bigger than my own.
Again, the power of the influence of one individual on the life of another person is something that I've really benefited from and have tried to replicate in my own life. You know, in our case, the first year of Education Unites, we had funding from the U.S. government, and then with the change to a new administration in the United States, the government funding went away.
I wonder, what are your opinions? What drives humanity to prioritize on weapons or defense that ultimately it destroys, it kills people, rather than spending on education?
And there's something about the human condition, the human mind, the human heart, the human soul, that finds that intolerable. That difference is somehow a threat. And
Yeah.
so, in a struggle for power or suspicion of others,
It used to be a school based on the United Nations that was bombed in Gaza.
this goes to the other end of the emotional spectrum. For me, you know, when I look at that, what I see, is desperation, uh, risk. Um, at the same time, I see aspiration.
We cannot not to talk about the U.S. election as we are days away. I see you're emotional, Dr. Horner.
Yeah, well, one of the things about me is I do, you forewarned me that some of the pictures, do affect people emotionally.
If you could change three things in the world, what would it be? As I'm working at the American College of Greece, it reminds me how education can shape lives. For me, it was a scholarship that I received in 2017. However, the story of education is much bigger than my own. Education has the power to uplift the whole community, especially those coming from a marginalized background, such as refugees and migrants. In 2015 and 16, when Greece was experiencing an influx of displaced people coming from Syria, Afghanistan, and some part of Africa, people who have lost their homes, their families. This particularly meant for the younger ones that they have lost the opportunity to be able to continue their education, perhaps forever. Amidst of all these, American College of Greece, with the support of US Embassy, they created the Education Unites Scholarship from camp to campus, where they provided 200 scholarships for refugees to be able to continue their education, regain their self-esteem, develop new sets of skills, and a new purpose for their life. According to the United Nations, worldwide, only 7% of refugees have access to higher education. This highlights the generosity of the college in providing a scholarship for refugees, and of course, the significant opportunities that the students receive. Today, there are 40 students in this program where they're pursuing their undergraduate programs. For many of us that we came after we left our home, we had the struggles to feel safe and comfortable. However, this college provided a safe place for us where we could openly express our thoughts, opinions, and be accepted for who we are. Here, we not only learned the knowledge and developed our skills, but we learned how to think, be curious, and ask questions and understand our rights and people's rights. The lesson learned is clear that investing in education and empowering one person is empowering the world. Despite that education has the power to unite people and to create a mutual understanding, we see that the governments are hesitant to invest in education, while they are spending billions and trillions of dollars on weapons that destroys. Which this raises many questions, and that's why I'm here today to meet the president of the American College of Greece, Dr. David Horner, to ask him questions on this. So let's meet him. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Untold podcast. Today, I have the honor to sit down here with Dr. David Horner, the esteemed president of the American College of Greece, ACG. Dr. Horner, impressive background spans over 5 decades in higher education, beginning as the youngest college president in the United States. Throughout his career, he has played a pivotal role in fostering inclusivity and diversity at ACG, particularly through Education Unite Scholarship, which I was fortunate to receive and be one of the applicant and students in this program. In this episode, we will have a chance to get to know about Dr. Horner's personal life, and of course, we will discuss about his experience, and we will have his thoughts on education and human rights. Dr. Horner, thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
My pleasure, and I'm proud and pleased that you're doing this work.
Thank you. How are you doing, first of all?
Good. It's a busy time in higher education in Greece. Been some important legislative changes introduced in the past year that we're trying to navigate, and so it continues to be. I started here in 2008. Soon descended into the Greek financial crisis, which lasted for almost 10 years. Just as we're coming out of that, the pandemic hit, and now this new legislation gives another challenge in front of us. But so we're doing well, but we're busy.
I see. Before we start the interview, I would like to take a moment to thank you and also thank the American College of Greece and anyone that they were behind creating or initiating Education Unite Scholarship. As you already know, that I have left my country, and education has given me a whole new purpose for my life, and feeling that I belong, and that's very important. Thank you so much. And as actually this conversation that we're having is a direct result of that scholarship and this opportunity that the college has provided for me. So thank you so much.
Well, from our perspective, we couldn't wish for a better return on our investment than that you're doing this work, involved in this way. It's a privilege to serve these students, and so it's a program we're very committed to and proud and pleased to be a part of it.
At this point, I would like to get to know more about you as a person. Anything that you would like to share with us about growing up, family, school, university, anything that you would like to share with us and with our audience?
Well, I am the son of 2 immigrants to the United States. I have 2 siblings, an older brother, 10 years older than myself. He was my athletic idol growing up. He was a fabulous athlete, so I admired that very much. My sister is 12 years older than me. All 3 of us attended college, pursued higher education. My sister also has a doctorate, as do I. My brother taught for a time. So education was something that our parents focused on. My father was an immigrant from Belfast, Ireland. He went to the United States at the age of 21 in 1929, the year of the Great Depression. I will say parenthetically, since he went to the U.S. In 1929 and I came to Greece in 2008, there seems to be something about when our family moves, Great Depressions happen. But I'd like to think it wasn't the Horner family that caused the U.S. Great Depression or the Greek financial crisis of 2009. But it's interesting that we had this, many years later, we had a similar experience of entering a country that was, in Greece's case, headed for a depression, and my father's case in New York, in the beginning of a depression. He survived the depression because he was a professional soccer player.
I
So
see.
he was able to be an athlete, a professional athlete, and work in the off season, get through the depression that way. My mother came from Canada. Both had limited education. My father only graduated or completed school through the fifth grade, my mother through high school. But for both of them, education was very important. They stressed it in our family, and it's been a big part of my brothers and my sisters and my personal and professional careers.
I see, I see. You mentioned that your father, he moved to the US when there was a Great Depression, and I believe that you were born there and that you grew up. How was your experience growing up in such environment as a first generation immigrant, I believe?
Well, one of the things that I remember clearly from my youth is I went to an all-boys school. And typically the families that attended that school were from the children of lawyers or doctors, maybe university professors. My father owned a millwork business. He was trained as a carpenter in Ireland. And so, as I said, he had only a fifth grade education. And I remember when he would attend the father-son banquet, an annual affair at the school, he was the only one who was pushing the peas on the plate onto his fork with his fingers. He was not as refined culturally, socially sophisticated. He was from a different background. I was very conscious of the fact that my father was different. His hands were rougher, not the smooth hands of a professional such as the ones I had. So I was aware of these sort of differences in class and status that as I've grown older, it's become more important for me to reflect on things I didn't quite understand back then. But it probably is a bit of what's behind my commitment to wanting to open up opportunities for people from backgrounds who may not have had the privileges of coming from a family of doctors, lawyers, and professors, but still for whom education can be very important.
I see, I see. Would you like to share any pivotal moment that made you the person that you are today? Any experience, any specific memory that you have had as a child or as a young adult person?
Well, I think I've had the benefit of, at many points along the way, of people taking a personal interest in me and encouraging me down a particular path.
I see.
One of the people, the first person who got me started thinking about higher education was a man by the name of Don Howard. I knew him as a very young person, as a teenager. He was the dean of students at the University of Massachusetts. And I got to know him through the church that my family attended. And he took an interest in me and was I think the first person who thought that education could be a good career path for me. So he got me thinking along these lines. And there are a number of other people along the way as I thought about that path, began pursuing that path, individuals who really made a difference in my life because they gave me advice, they provided an example, they made me aware of an opportunity, they helped me take advantage of that opportunity. So those individuals have made a tremendous difference, and I'd probably use up the entire video if I talked about the individual instances.
I see.
But again, the power of the influence of one individual on the life of another person is something that I've really benefited from and have tried to replicate in my own life.
Yeah, I see. Actually, I will take this opportunity to mention Kathleen McDonald. She is a director of Education Unite, and I think she have had such role in my life, at least since I moved to this college. She has helped me so much, and I'm grateful for that. I wonder, you were the first or the youngest college president. How this came about? How this happened?
Well, again, it's a story of a person making a difference. I studied philosophy as an undergraduate at a very small college. I started out at Brown University, a very prestigious institution. And because of a variety of personal circumstances, I ended up transferring to this very tiny college that I later became president of. And I studied there with a particular philosopher. That philosopher, let me see, it was 7 years after I graduated from the college, was on the search committee for the president of the college.
I see.
And he nominated me, put my name forward. When I was made aware of that nomination, I didn't respond. I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm 20, at the time, 28 years old. They're not going to appoint me as president. But he called me on the phone and he said, we haven't gotten your application. And I told him, Dr. Gregory, I don't think it makes sense. He said, no, we're serious. We think you're back. We know you're young, but we are very interested in you. So he encouraged me to apply, and then I got in the process. I did apply, and I ended up getting the position. But that never would have happened without his personal encouragement, his intervention. And so that position and this one at the American College of Greece came through personal connections and relationships of people who took an interest in me.
I see. I really believe in what you described, that has to do when helping people or advising people or giving them opportunities. It's a powerful thing, and that has happened to myself also. Like since I left, I have had people, they helped me along the way. So it's a great thing. When I was preparing for the interview, as you rightly mentioned, I learned that your father from Belfast of Ireland went to the US, if I'm not mistaken, 95 years ago. And that makes you as a first generation of immigrant. And then also, of course, I knew that American College of Greece was established in Smyrna in Karen, Turkey, I would say. And that after the catastrophe of Smyrna in 1922, the college itself became a refugee and moved to Greece. I wonder how the inclusivity or the opportunity, especially through Education Unite, how your personal background and also the college history as a refugee has implemented and have created this diversity and inclusive college or space for different people.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing I'd want to say about that is it isn't just my commitment. I remember in our board of trustees when we discussed this program that the U.S. Embassy wanted to start for Education Unites, we explained it to the board. And one of our board members, Cosmo Kaliorakos is his name, now lives in Hong Kong. He pointed out when this whole idea was introduced, he said, we institutionally were once refugees, and we were taken in, invited in to come to Greece. And so this idea of remembering our institutional history is something that not only was I aware of it, but our board of trustees was aware of it. And it's something that many in this community are powerfully aware of, our history as an institution to have been planted, grown up in one country, and then having to move to another country and reestablish yourself and be reborn. Again, in the Nazi occupation, to be overwhelmed by circumstances and having to rebuild again after that. So these experiences I think are deep in our institutional collective memory, and certainly gave us more than sufficient motivation to want to do what we could with Education Unites.
I see. Just a bit of background for the audience, that Education Unite was initiated by the American College of Greece and the U.S. with the support of U.S. Embassy in 2016-17, which provided in the first phase nearly 200 scholarships for refugees. And of course, providing education for refugees and displaced people, that nearly 7% of refugees worldwide, they have access to opportunity. It shows that how significant this opportunity for refugees, including myself, that I received from the American College of Greece, to be able to continue with our education was. And of course, it shows the generosity of the American College of Greece. What was interesting, Dr. Horner, of course, I have had a time to talk with different students and meet them, the students that they have received the scholarships. I found so many similarities between the way that we are thinking about the college. Of course, that this whole opportunity has given us a whole purpose of being able to feel that we are part of this world or this community, especially since we left our country. We all envision a future for ourselves, that we want to become this person, that person. And what really most importantly stood for me, it was that this college was one of the places, or for majority of us, to feel safe after leaving our home. because we could, in the class, we could express our thoughts, discuss with the professor, with the students, and we were accepted. I wonder what it makes you feel when you hear such stories, and what does this specifically mean also for the institution, for the college?
Well, it fills me with a sense of gratitude that we've been able to provide these opportunities. Um, Given the conflicts that are taking place in the world now that find expression on college and university campuses around the world, because we're based in the United States, I'm very aware of how the campuses there have been disrupted through the demonstrations that are the result of some of the conflicts in the world, especially the Palestinian-Israeli conflict now. And what some of those tensions bring out is that it's difficult to maintain a place where people can feel safe, where people can discuss difficult issues from different points of view, hear each other, listen to each other, learn from each other. Now, that is ideally what the American philosophy of a university campus is supposed to be. It's supposed to be about the free pursuit of truth, a place where students and faculty can pursue the truth wherever it takes them, even to uncomfortable places. But it's one thing to espouse that philosophy. It's quite another to have an environment and a campus culture that allows people to, as you say, feel safe and to have those kinds of experiences. So I think when I hear this, it pleases me because it means that we're reasonably successful in maintaining that welcoming environment. And so it's just an important characteristic that I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that the students are having this experience. I've heard a number of the stories of some of the Education United students, and I know the very difficult circumstances from which they've come.
Yes.
And so for them to find a place that feels safe, that feels supportive, where their dreams can, be imagined again and pursued, as an educator, it doesn't get much more fulfilling than that.
I see. And of course, I would like to take this opportunity to invite other institutions, universities, and colleges to be more inclusive and create opportunities like DERE that provided scholarships for refugees. I believe that empowering a person is empowering the world. I wonder, what do you think that, given the context that we know that education is a very important individual's life, what do you see? How do you see the role of specifically the government, the social or people of the society, and also the colleges to be able to being inclusive and to provide scholarships for not just refugees but any marginalized communities?
Yeah. Well, access to education is one of the great challenges that we face in the world. And like most great challenges, it's not easily solved. The reason it's a great challenge is because the solution may not be obvious. It may take resources that you don't have, you wish you had, but you don't. So I think it's something that constantly has to be pursued. So I've worked primarily in two environments, the United States for most of my career, and then here in Greece. Both countries, I would say, are concerned very much with providing access for students from various backgrounds to pursue education and to be able to progress themselves personally, contribute to the society, overcome past disadvantages that they may have experienced that may apply to them individually or as a member of a group or something like that. So the United States has done that in higher education by providing both public education and then generous programs of financial aid from the federal government, from state governments, individuals, foundations, corporations, trying to get the resources to give students to be able to pursue these educational possibilities. So in the United States, the compact has been with government, federal, national, and state, and with the taxation system to gather resources that could then support educational institutions that will draw students in, and then to look to the private sector, the institutions themselves where they have resources, schools like Harvard that have enormous financial resources, to use those resources to open up pathways for underprivileged people, or other institutions not so well endowed to do what they can, and support from the private sector. Now, here in Greece, the approach has been much more through the public universities, because Greece has had a focus for the last 50 years on public education and trying to support students that way. It's a different model. It's changing now with some of the new Greek law, but it's still, I think, aimed at the same purpose of education being a pathway for elevating individuals and groups within society so that everybody can participate. That's the goal, open access.
Yeah.
But it's not easily achieved.
Yeah, and what, in your opinion, would you see the reasons or the reasons that this integration or this schooling being able to integrate, let's say like at least refugees or enabling them with education has been very slow, or some places not even, it doesn't exist much. So in your opinion, what do you think, what are the sources of
Well, I think like many things in life, it comes down to scarcity of resources.
I see.
You know, in our case, the first year of Education Unites, we had funding from the U.S. government, and then with the change to a new administration in the United States, the government funding went away. So we faced the question of what were we going to do, and what we decided to do was to continue the funding ourselves from our own resources.
Yep.
Now, that is not so much a pat on our own back as it is an acknowledgement that we had the resources, we felt we did anyway, that we could continue it. Some other schools, perhaps, that were able to participate with the U.S. funding, the government funding, didn't continue, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't perhaps have the resources that we had. So I think largely it's partly a question of will, of political will, or institutional will, but it's also a question of just the scarcity of resources.
I see. I would like to move on and discuss a bit the bigger picture, or at least when it comes to education. When I did the research, I found that globally, at least in 2023, $2.4 trillion was spent in weaponaries and creating and military expenses, which U.S. comes first, as the highest, then China, Russia, and India. I wonder, what are your opinions? What drives humanity to prioritize on weapons or defense that ultimately destroys, it kills people, rather than spending on education? What do you think that drives humanity? Is it politics? Do you think, is it a part of evolution and human growth?
That's a profound question to which I think I will have an imperfect answer, but it's an important question. You know, there's something in humanity that seems to believe that violence is somehow going to be a solution. And I'm not aware of anything that has been pursued where violence provided the solution that was ultimately necessary. It begins perhaps with violence, but it's never solved with violence. I mean, violence is either in the personal, individual one-on-one, or between nations. People have to finally say, enough, it's enough killing, enough violence. There's got to be a different solution. I mentioned earlier on, we mentioned my immigrant father. Belfast, the Belfast he was raised in was a Belfast of religious violence, Protestants and Catholics. And in fact, some of my friends tease me that I am the son of a terrorist, because my father, when he was 12 years old, had a wheelbarrow that he would wheel through the streets of Belfast that smuggled guns as a 12-year-old. So ultimately, the Irish and the British needed to come to an understanding that the violence of Protestants against Catholics was not going to solve the issue. Violence never resolves the issues.
Yeah.
But it's the default resort nationally and individually that so many people seek. So ultimately, I think it's a profound human response that we've learned from whatever source, I'm not sure, that causes us to believe that these are necessary somehow recourses that we take.
Dr. Horner, we see that humanity is while we are at the peak of our existence with education, technology, and on, at the same time we are facing many challenges that threats the whole humanity. That has to do with the rise of AI, war in Middle East and in Ukraine, famine, and on climate change. I wonder, in your opinion, what do you think that's missing, let's say, in the global educational system, and also if you could particularly talk about the US? What's missing that it doesn't show our common humanity at the end of the day?
Yeah. I'm sure there are always things missing in every aspect of our lives. There are ways we need to improve, and that's certainly true of education. But I'm not sure that fundamentally the issue that you have your finger on is an issue that is something education is primarily the source of a solution. To me, you're pointing at deeper questions of humanity that go more into the religious, the things beyond certainly beyond formal educational system. Why are people self-absorbed? Why are they not more aware of others? Why are they not more empathetic? Why do we not have the control of our own instincts?
Yep.
And the dark sides of our nature better than we do. These are fundamental questions that I'm sure AI is not going to solve for us. And these are the fundamental questions that the ancient Greek philosophers were dealing with, and they are questions we will always deal with as human beings. Now, these questions are dealt with in education. My early career in education was in philosophy, and I loved philosophy because it dealt with these questions. What is justice? What is goodness? What is beauty? And how do you pursue those things, both individually and collectively? So education does touch on these things, and I think that it does need to be a part of the educational process to be a part of forming the whole student, and their moral conscience as well as their professional skills and abilities. But I think it's a much broader issue than just education. It goes to fundamentally what it is to be human and the paradoxes of what's great about us as people and what is not great about us, and the things that we look at historically and say, how could that happen? And then you look around and you see it happening today.
Yep.
It's like we've learned nothing. It's a challenge for education, but it's a challenge, I think, that goes beyond education.
I see. And how do you see the future when it comes to education, adding AI on top of it?
Well, that is something that I'm going to have to look to my younger colleagues who are more technologically sophisticated and aware to resolve. I know it's something we're paying a lot of attention to here now. Our faculty development seminar at the beginning of the academic year was all about AI and how we might be adapting to that. I think it's very much in the developmental phases. We are adjusting to the early waves, and there's going to be more waves. But however that goes, back to your previous question, I know it is not, at least I feel certain, and as a former philosopher, I'm very careful about what I say I know, but I think I do know that AI will not solve these sort of fundamental questions of what it means to be human and human beings treating other human beings in humane ways. This is beyond the reach of technology, I think.
I see. Let's hope for that day, and we'll see if that will happen or not. Thank you so much, sir. I will at this point I would like you to show you some images, and I would like to have your thoughts and reactions on those. The first image is a award ceremony, and I would like to ask your thoughts. Why do you think that receiving or giving awards for students is important?
Those are images from our awards ceremony?
Yes.
Yes.
This summer.
Yes, yes. So, well, that night of our student awards ceremony is for me one of the most enjoyable nights of the year that I have, because we put on display on that night the achievement of students across the full spectrum of the student experience that they have here.
Yep.
So people get awards for academic excellence. They get award for athletic performance, for contributions to the community, for contributing as a study abroad student or as a parallel study student. And I think the great thing about these sorts of educational communities is the richness of the complexity of the human talents that are assembled here.
I see.
And you see them on display there. So it's a great thing, I think, to recognize individual achievement, which we do, and we're proud of the students who achieve that. But it also speaks to, I think, the excellence that we strive for in the community as a whole, to be a holistic community that brings out the best in all of us, the talents that each of us uniquely brings. And that's a night where it goes on display. So that is a night of joy and super proud moment institutionally for us and for me.
Absolutely. The second photo that I would like to show is Refugees Crossing.
Yeah. This goes to the other end of the emotional spectrum for me. You know, when I look at that, what I see, is desperation, risk. At the same time, I see aspiration. That it's a very dangerous situation, perhaps in part to avoid danger, perhaps what was regarded as greater danger, but I suspect also motivated still by the belief that there's something better out there. And so it's an aspirational thing as well as, but it's a very desperate thing. It's a terrible image.
The other image that I would like to show you is I downloaded this photo from the United Nations website, and this is it used to be a school based on the United Nations that was bombed in Gaza.
Yep. So when I see that, horrific, and what causes me to think about a whole bunch of things. One of them obviously is, the little boy. Looks to me to be a little boy there, who's perhaps this was his school, and it was a place of learning, and is now a place of despair. But it is so much easier to destroy than to build. This shows the horrible answer. That's easier to do. It takes time to physically build things. It takes even more time to build the quality of experiences that take place within those physical spaces, all of which has been destroyed by this. And so it's tragic.
We cannot not to talk about the U.S. election as we are days away.
Yeah. So I have deep-seated feelings about this election. If I knew you were going to show me this picture, I might have brought my hat. So I have a hat that says "White Dudes for Harris." So personally, I mean, as the president of the college, I don't take political sides, but personally, I do take a side. I've voted. I think it's an extremely important presidential election. And in my view, the avenue of hope for the United States and the United States' role in the world follows the path of the candidate on the right, hopefully President-elect Harris.
I also believe that it's a very crucial election, not just for the US, but for the world. And it's very interesting that US holds such a power and influence that I cannot influence, of course, the election, but I'm sure that it influenced my life as well, and millions of other around the world. So let's hope for the best. And this is another image that I would like to show you.
Mm-hmm. The little sphere. Yeah. Well, to me, that image of the world, in space suggests the mystery of our experience, and in a sense, the fragility of it. I mean, it appears it's floating. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem very stable. What holds it together, I'm not entirely clear about. But it's a beautiful image from that far, and yet it has so much pain and struggle associated with what takes place there. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of vastness, beauty, and a kind of sense of humility about what we inhabit together.
Mm-hmm. I see you're emotional, Dr. Horner.
Yeah, well, one of the things about me is I do, you forewarned me that some of the pictures, do affect people emotionally. I do tend to show my emotions easily, so this is not an unusual thing for me.
Good.
But yeah, these are things that touch me deeply.
We're at the last segment of our interview,
Mm-hmm.
and I will ask you some questions, and I would appreciate your answers, of course. What truth about existence would you choose if you could discover one?
What truth about
existence you would like to know if you could choose?
I am still deeply puzzled by our abilities individually and collectively to not rein in our less productive instincts or mm-hmm. destructive instincts, and to elevate the things that are good about us. I mean, it's a perplexity that is why it is that way. I know that what the answer of some theologians is that it's original sin or something like that, but it's deeply troubling.
How does it feel to be a migrant in Greece?
So I have had the pleasure of being adopted by various communities mm-hmm. that I did not grow up in. Before coming here for 18 years, I was president of one of the 5 Swedish founded colleges and universities in mm-hmm. the United States. So I was adopted by Swedes for 18 years, mm-hmm. and they were kind and good to me. For the last 17 years, I've been here and been adopted by the Greek community. I always tell folks, I go back and forth to the US 5 or 6 times a year. In whichever direction I go, now I feel like I'm going home. So there are parts of Greece that feel like home to me, and of course the United States is home. It's a wonderful thing to be accepted by people who are not the people with whom you grew up. Mm-hmm. So I'll add a personal dimension to this. My fiance is, like myself, a widow. We both had long marriages, and our spouses passed away. And over the last 5 years, we have become a couple, and we're going to get married at the end of May.
Amazing.
Despite we're in our 70s, we're doing this thing. But my fiance was raised in the Bronx. She's African American, and our home will be, where her home has been since the 1990s, in Richmond, Virginia. She has there a wonderful community of friends, some of whom are white, but most of whom are black. And so that group is yet another community that I've now been welcomed into and embraced. So the Swedes, the Greeks, the black community of Richmond that Deborah has introduced me to. Her name is Dr. Deborah Jewel Sherman. She's a just retired Harvard professor from the Graduate School of Education. So it's a wonderful thing to be accepted by, and in a way, not just accepted, but welcomed and embraced by a community that is not the community with which you grew up. It's fabulous, which goes back to the earlier question. Why is that not the thing that we see around the world?
Yeah.
The embrace of others and what you get derived from that, because what you get is just incredibly wonderful.
Absolutely. If you could change 3 things in the world, what would it be?
I would change poverty and things associated with that, which would be, people's ability to have enough to eat and all of that. I would change access to education as a pathway for people realizing the best of themselves. And let's see, economic justice is something I care a lot about. Poverty would do that. Social mobility I care a lot about, and education would do that. The third thing that I would change is I would have people feeling joy much more than they do now.
A nice one. Since World War II, there has been more people displaced since World War II. In your opinion, what does this say about humanity?
That more people have been displaced
since World War II.
Well, I think one thing it says is that more people are aware of some of the displacement, I presume, is by choice, in the sense that people they're on the move for some reason. I think one of the reasons they're on the move is they're aware of maybe better circumstances somewhere else. In terms of that's the attraction aspect. But in terms of the expulsion aspect of what is pushing people out, I don't know what all the causes of that are, but I assume it has a lot to do with this inability of people to get along with people who are different. I mean, our school that came from Turkey in 1923 was destroyed because the city of Smyrna was a place where different populations mix. And there's something about the human condition, the human mind, the human heart, the human soul, that finds that intolerable, that difference is somehow a threat. And so in a struggle for power or suspicion of others or whatever, there have to be winners and losers, and at least this is how people feel, and others are pushed aside. I don't know what's causing it. The ability of people to move, as well as their awareness of other things, is a part of it. But I don't know.
Do you see the world more united or divided today?
Because of technology, I think we're more aware of the divisions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to measure whether these are historically larger
Mm-hmm.
or not. I know that sometimes we see statistics that will point to hopeful signs, despite all of the problems that we're aware of. But I don't I don't have a good personal sense of, is this, are we escalating in these tensions and these divisions, or are we simply more aware of them? Clearly, we haven't been able to resolve them, the ones that have
I see.
historically troubled us.
Yeah. If you had an opportunity to display a message that the whole humanity could see, what would you write there?
Love one another.
And last question.
I didn't invent that.
Yeah. And last question. Do you consider yourself a happy person?
Yes, I do, and grateful that that my life does have joy, and a sense of contribution, a sense of fulfillment, and a sense of good relationships with the people around me. I feel a lot of gratitude in my spirit for the life that I've been able to live.
Amazing. Dr. Horner, thank you so much for the work that you do, for the opportunities that you create. Thank you so much.
My pleasure,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
thank you again.
Of course, of course. Everyone watching us, thank you, and please follow for more. Thank you.